Hey everybody, how's it going? So I see that a lot of you liked my video that I did yesterday about the US debt, which is not a debt. Those are dollars that are held in the hands of individuals and firms and countries throughout the world, and they hold those dollars in the form of treasuries. But one guy here called me an idiot because he said, well, you can't just keep printing money because it's going to cause inflation. First of all, let's understand a few things. Let's go over some basics. All government spending is money printing, okay? We don't dig our money up out of the ground. It's basically just an accounting system. I mean, when the government needs to make a payment, it informs its bank, which is the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve will credit the bank account of the payee, that is the person receiving the payment. It's all by computer. So the payments, the money, quote unquote, that's all electronic. It's just an entry system. So that basically this is just an accounting system. You know, the world went off of a barter type of system thousands of years ago. I mean, if you think about it, think about how cumbersome it would be. Let's say I build cars, okay, and you work for me. So your labor today is equal to what? Let's say the muffler on the car, the motor. So now I give you that motor, and now you need to go take that motor and try to exchange it with somebody to get some dinner. I mean, that's ridiculous, okay? So we can't use barter. So basically the money system, money is just units, okay? It's units of accounting. So, okay, you did this much labor for me, and that equates to this many units, and I give you those units in the form of money. There is nothing keeping us from creating those units, as I just mentioned. That's just a keystroke, for the government at least. Now, the government said, now, of course, we don't have to use the government's units. I mean, you're free to enter into a transactional system with somebody else or a firm on whatever terms you like. But the government needs to procure itself because, obviously, as citizens, we demand that the government do certain things, like have a military for defense, maybe some infrastructure, this sort of stuff, education, okay? So the government, and it hasn't always been this way, for a long time the government needed gold to create money. But we went off that system. That too was cumbersome, okay? And it gave an advantage to countries that produced gold. So it said, well, we're going to issue our units, okay? And we're going to issue our units, and our units you could accumulate. And we are going to require that you pay us back, you give us back some of those units every year or every quarter, whatever. That's taxation, okay? So, and if you don't give us back some of those units, then bad things are going to happen to you. We could garnish things that you have. Maybe you could even go to jail, all right? So they create an incentive, and yes, maybe it is somewhat coercive, but that's what imparts the value to the units. So the government creates these units, and we go about our work and labor to accumulate the units. They're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. All right. So they're very easily exchanged. You don't have to then labor for a piece of some physical item and then go out and barter for what it is you need. You have the units, and you can go out and exchange those units for whatever it is that you need. It's just a very simple system. So the way to think about money and the monetary system is just an accounting system, okay? My labor is worth X amount of units. My product is worth X amount of units. You get the units, you go out, you exchange it for what you need. It's much easier to run an economy under those conditions. Now, as far as printing money, creating inflation, that is a very, very hard thing to do. I think I gave the example that Japan created something like 700 trillion yen in the last 25 years, trying hard to create inflation, and it has not happened. We have a 20 trillion so-called debt, right? I said that's not a debt. That's the excess amount that was spent, that was created by the government, which was not given back in the form of taxes. So we printed 20 trillion net, you could say, no inflation. The Fed created 23 trillion to bail out the banks during the financial crisis, no inflation. Last year alone, if you go to the daily treasury statement, the United States government redeemed over 70 trillion worth of public debt securities, no inflation. How did they get to 70 trillion? They printed it, okay? It's very hard in a modern, open, competitive economy to create inflation by printing money, because you got all these entrepreneurs and clever people and firms. They want to accumulate more and more of those units, that government money. And when the incentive is there to get more, they create more in order to get more of those units. Now, the best way to print money, this is my opinion, the best way to print money is to create incentives for more things to be made, all right? When the government spends money to build roads and infrastructure, that is a highly, highly productive and useful product, okay? Everything that you have came to you on a road via probably a truck, all right? Same thing with education. You have an educated citizenry. If you spend money on that, well, people will become more innovative. They become more productive. It's a peaceful society. It's a good society, all right? Same thing with healthcare. If humans are the most important capital in a capitalistic system, and maybe that's becoming less true with robotics, but you still need humans to invent the robots, right? Taking care of that human capital is also a very good investment. So when you spend in that fashion, all right, that's a good thing. Now, the government could just spend and hand out money to people, and it still would create more output. I don't think there's an economist in the world who would deny that higher income also equates to higher output. As a matter of fact, that's an identity. National income equals national product. So, bottom line, and you can't make comparisons. By the way, a lot of people do this, and it's wrong. You can't make comparisons between Zimbabwe and Weimar Republic. Those were broken economies. Those were corrupt. Weimar had much of its industrial capacity occupied by France. They had to pay in commodities or in foreign currency. They didn't have it. Zimbabwe is a total basket case, so you cannot compare those examples. So you cannot use those as examples for the United States or any modern competitive industrial economy, technologically advanced, like Japan, for example, 700 trillion, no inflation. They're dying to get some inflation. So we have to stop with these very, very ignorant and uneducated responses. And also, people, educate yourself. Get some knowledge on this, all right? Because it's very, very important. Very important. Bye.